I'm Joe Gigliotti, PhD, and I am your guide for this journey you are about to embark on. Now, to survive here in this generation, you're going to have to know a few things. Come along for the ride. I will show you how to live. And welcome to another edition of How to Live. I'm your host, Professor and PhD, Joe Gigliotti. Thanks for coming along for the ride once again. Today's lesson, or episode of How to Live is all about how to manage money. We all like to have money. Why not? We need it to buy the things that we need to live on an everyday basis, and those fun little toys that we like to buy as well. So our first lesson of the day in how to manage money, we have to ask ourselves a question. And that question just what is money? What is money?
$2.98. That's how much money it will take to buy a gallon of paint. It's Friday morning and Tom Havens is to buy the paint after school today. To make the purchase, his father gives him a $5 bill, a crisp, new $5 bill that he received at the bank yesterday. This particular piece of money is just starting in circulation. What will happen to it? What will it be used for? What can money be used for? What is money, anyway? After school, the $5 bill goes to a hardware store where Tom uses it to buy the paint. This is one of the most common ways in which we all use money, as a medium of exchange for goods. Tom exchanges a certain amount of money for a gallon of paint. The clerk naturally accepts the money, and he gives Tom a smaller amount of money in change. And so the $5 bill has found its way into this cash register. But it doesn't stay long. It's to be used to pay Mr. Kelly an electric work he has just done in the store. The store is not paying for wire or fixtures, special services. This is another use for money, as a medium of exchange for services as well as for goods. The $5 bill is moving fast. That's because it's so convenient to use in business transactions. In fact, it's hard to imagine doing business without money. Yet for thousands of years, people did get along without money. In primitive days, living was simple and each family produced whatever it needed. The first kind of business was barter. A good stone cutter, for instance, might make a few extra tools and simply trade them for furs and other things he wanted. It was easy. There was no need for money. Even today, barter has its place. Not long ago, Tom Havens got a spotlight for his bike by trading a catcher's mitt for it. Swapping like this works well between friends. But what would you trade in a hardware store for a gallon of paint? And how would the store owner get the paint and the other goods he sells? What could he trade with all the people who had a hand in transporting the goods to his store? What could he possibly swap with all the stockholders of the hundreds of factories that produced the goods? How could he barter with every individual workman who played a part in the manufacture of each article? No, life today is too complex. People are too dependent upon each other. Jobs are too highly specialized for us to do business by barter. And that's why we depend on money as a quick and easy medium of exchange. Thus, instead of doing a certain amount of electrical work in exchange for gasoline, Mr. Kelly pays for the gas with, yes, the same $5 bill he received at the hardware store. This convenience of modern money has evolved from an age-old search for a satisfactory medium of exchange. How Out of the simple barter of primitive people, spearheads became one of the first articles used as money. Shells have also served as money. Wampum was used by the American Indians. And hundreds of other articles have been money to various people at various times. But none of these met all the requirements of good money. Money should be something of value, yet who but a huntsman has any use for spearheads? The value should be obvious and uniform. Who but an expert knows what this fur pelt is worth? Money should be easy to carry about. Metal rods certainly aren't. Money should be divisible. How do you make change when the price is half a cow? Money should be durable. Too much salt money got caught in the rain. Out of such trying experiences, gold and silver emerged as the most durable, most convenient, most satisfactory money. For greater convenience, men started stamping out gold and silver coins with values imprinted on them. Later, governments took over the exclusive function of coining money, because unscrupulous men began to cover cheap metal discs with gold and silver plating. So today in the United States, any money is counterfeit and so worthless unless issued by the federal government, and anyone who knowingly tries to spend counterfeit money may be fined a large amount and sent to jail. The coins we use are made in one of the 3 mints of the United States Treasury, located in San Francisco, Denver, and Philadelphia. And from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington comes our paper money, including, of course, the $5 bill of this story. This represents the final stage in the evolution of modern money. For while metal coins are handy for dealing in small amounts of money, when transactions require larger amounts, paper money is far more practical. A $5 bill, for example, is much easier to handle than, say, $5 in dimes. And just imagine buying something that costs $100 and paying for it with 10,000 cents. So the values of the money we use every day are the values fixed by the government. The paper bills and even the coins are not in themselves actually worth the amounts they represent. Their face values, however, are guaranteed not only by huge reserves of gold and silver, but by the stability of the government, which fixed those values. As long as people remain confident that our government is strong and secure, they will continue freely to accept and spend its money without questioning the value, as they have done with our $5 bill, which is now about to move again, because Mrs. Moore has come in to cash a check. A check is not money. It is one kind of substitute for money. Its value is guaranteed not by the government, but by the person who signs it. Since the man at the filling station knows Mrs. Moore, he is willing to take her word that she has enough money in the bank to make the check good. So he cashes it for her. Saturday morning finds the $5 bill still in Mrs. Moore's purse. How will she use it?
Good morning. May I help you?
Yes. Can you tell me the price of those bookends in the window?
Yes, that pair is $8.75 and most attractive.
I'm afraid that's more than I care to spend. Do you have a cheaper pair?
I do have one pair left that's an exceptional value. It's really worth $6.50, but it's on sale at just $5.
I'll take them, please. They're very good looking and certainly worth $5.
Worth $5. Yes, since the value of our money is fixed by the government, we use it as a standard for measuring other values. So money is not only a medium of exchange, but also a standard of value. At 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, the $5 bill is transferred from the cash register in the gift shop to the pay envelope of Virginia Height, the clerk who sold Mrs. Moore the bookends. And when Miss Height goes to spend the bill, she learns how money serves still another purpose.
Hello. Do you want to make another payment on your radio?
Well, yes. But I see the price has gone up since I bought it.
Well, don't worry about that. You have to pay only the original price of $30.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Your balance is just $15.
I was so sure the price when I bought it was only $30.
So we see how money serves as a standard for future payments, a yardstick by which we measure the value of anything bought or sold to be paid for in the future. But what of the $5 bill? Soon its adventures take a strange turn. This radio shop is where Tom Havens works after school and on Saturdays. When he's finished his work for the week, he gets a $5 bill. As we have seen, it could be the same $5 bill his father gave him to buy the paint. And where did his father get it? From the bank, and it's going back there. Tom deposits the $5 bill in his savings account. He deposits his money every week, storing it up for his future needs. This way, he's using money as a storehouse of value. Thus, our $5 bill has completed one round trip from the bank and back. Tom first used it as a medium of exchange for goods. Mr. Kelly received it as a medium of exchange for services. It was convenient for him to carry around and use for any business transaction. And no one ever questioned that it was worth $5 because its value has been fixed and guaranteed by the government. When Mrs. Moore made her purchase, she used money as a standard of value. And Miss Height found that money is also a standard of future payments. When the bill returned to Tom, he used it as a storehouse of value. Now it's back in the bank, but it will pass through many, many more hands before it is worn out and withdrawn from circulation. It may even go along with some world traveler who will soon exchange it for an equal value of money of some other nation. For modern money, convenient to use, easy to recognize, and universally accepted for the value fixed by a stable government, it is money which makes possible our complex international society of business, trade, and travel.
All right, welcome back. Now that we've got a definition of exactly what is money, it's time to get back into just how to manage that money. And part of that is to don't go all out necessarily with your money. Be thrifty.
In the afternoons, the store across the street from school does a rushing business. At least one customer buys those deluxe concoctions. Meet Jack Firth. And look at that. It's a peach super delight.
Boy, that sure is a swell-looking camera, Ralph. Wish my dad would get me one like that.
Well, my dad didn't buy the camera. I bought it myself.
You did? Well, how did you do that? How could you afford it? You don't earn any more than I do.
No, I just saved up for the camera.
Saved up? How can you save up? There's always something you have to buy.
I got Pete's Super Delight, huh?
Huh.
Well, I just worked out a budget that allowed for savings.
A budget? Oh, no. I tried a budget once. Didn't work.
Well, I tried a couple budgets at first that didn't work either. Then Dad showed me a way that really can work.
How? How do you work your budget? Oh, no. It wouldn't work for me anyway.
Oh, it might, Jack. See? This is my camera graph. That's the way I kept track of my progress in saving for the camera.
Well, what does the graph mean?
Well, along this side over here, I have the savings marked off. And the weeks are marked along the bottom. I aimed at this dotted line to save $2 a week for 20 weeks, and then I'd have my camera. I almost made it, too. But then a couple of times I slipped and didn't save my $2 that week. But I finally made it, and now...
Oh, it looks like a good idea. What's this one here?
Well, that's for the tripod I want. I'm doing better on this graph. It's a lot easier now that I've done it once.
Yes, Ralph has a budget and a method of saving that shows results. If Jack were as determined to get a camera, if all of us were as determined to save for things we want, Perhaps we could budget successfully and get some of them. What about it? Is it easy to make a budget work? Jack will have to prove that to himself. And if his taste is always as rich as it is this afternoon, it may not be easy. How do you make a budget? Is just a graph enough? A few days ago, Jack saw an example of a budget, the budget his family uses. Out of its total weekly income, Jack's family allows so much for food, household, clothing. Each part of their regular expenses is allowed for in the budget. And they try to make their expenses regular so as to follow the budget as closely as possible. Yes, even Jack's allowance for his work around the house is part of the family budget. And there's a provision for savings, even with all those other expenses. So the family has a budget which allows for savings. Are budgets just for parents? Can Jack do any saving out of his income? Well, let's see. Let's take a look at it. There's that work-at-home allowance of $2 a week. And Jack earns $6 a week working part-time in the library. Now combine these two, and we have Jack's total income, $8 a week, for Jack's expenses and what he can save. Let's see. Regular, predictable expenses like lunch money, car fare, and then the expenses that aren't quite so easy to predict. Personal expenses, after-school snacks. Now let's try to hold that down to 50 cents and save more. Then school supplies. And entertainment, movies and dates. There. Does that handle Jack's expenses? Look, there's $3 left for savings. That's more than Jack expected. What did he do with all that money before? There's one type of thing that ate up his cash. If he'd do without extravagances, he could save every week. But he'll have to watch things, keep records of expenditures. He'd better write down a list of expenses to watch. Too many movies, too much candy. And maybe Jack can try Ralph's idea of a graph. When you save for a specific goal or purpose, it's easier to stick to the budget if you have a visual reminder. $3 a week for 14 weeks will do the trick. Jack got underway in fine style. The fourth week, this caught Jack's eye. $1, That'll knock a hole in the budget. Maybe not save so much this week. No. Want that camera. Budgets ought to allow for this sort of expense. Why, Jack's budget does allow for it. Entertainment, that's right. That's simple. Just don't go to any movies this week. But that show at the Strand. Wanted to see that. And it won't be on next week. Can't go to both that and the class mixer. Have to choose. More fun at the mixer. That's what it'll be. Well, you can't have everything you want. And Jack wants a camera.
Peach soup. No, Coke, please. Make it 2.
Right.
Well, you must be on a budget. How's it working out?
Oh, pretty well, I guess, but it's hard sometimes. Oh, boy, I sure would like a Pete Super Delight right now.
Well, Jack, you can't stick to your budget all of the time.
No, Jack doesn't have to follow his budget. But he has made his own rules to save for a camera. As long as he follows those rules and chooses to save, he'll find that the pennies certainly add up at the end of the week. But not all choices are so easily made. That'll be some football game, and Jack wants to go. Who wouldn't? Well, where can this fit into the budget? Perhaps the money for entertainment and... No, he's already used that for Dad's birthday next week. It's either no savings this week or no game. So, to go to the game and not save anything this week means setting his camera back 1 week. Jack decides the game is worth postponing the camera for 1 week. He notes the expense in his little book. But that pen, the one he's had so long, has to break now. Have to buy a new one. See, this budget business is no good. Jack doesn't see how anybody makes it work. But by the time he gets home, Jack has thought it out. And he knows that when you want something hard enough, you can find ways to save for it. One way to keep the budget going is to make things do. Jack knows how to fix that leaky pen with a little cement. Not as good as new, but it'll hold for a while. So Jack goes on, trying to stick to his revised schedule. But a few weeks later, his repair job gives out. He just has to buy a new pen. This one, which fits within his 50-cent school supplies budget, is not a good buy at any price. But to pay for this one, he'd have to take some out of his savings. He knows, however, that buying cheap, unsatisfactory products is never thrifty. So, even though this pen will make him draw money from his savings account, it is a better buy and a necessity. But Jack isn't going to let that setback stop him. He still wants that camera. By saying no to extravagance. By finding ways of entertainment that don't cost money. By fixing things and making them last. Jack keeps going toward that goal. Every week seems a little easier until finally Jack makes it. Right on schedule. Isn't that a honey? It was really worth saving for. As Jack gets a better idea of what he can do, he reorganizes his figures to save better and spend better. He's making new plans. How about you? How will you do it?
Hello there, welcome back. Now that we've learned all about just how to be thrifty, it's time to dive into another lesson of how to manage your money. And that involves just knowing exactly what's going on with your finances. Just how much do you have in the bank? How much can you afford to spend? And that brings us to our lesson, know your finances.
Understanding the dollar. That means more than knowing what a dollar bill looks like or what a silver dollar is. To understand the dollar, we must know something about the human story of the dollar in the everyday business of living. Something of the functions and the value of the dollar.
Good morning, Mr. Blaine.
How are you this morning, Miss Mueller?
I'm fine. I was in the kitchen. I didn't hear you come down the stairs.
I'm in a hurry. I have to be early to school today, but I thought I'd leave you the rent check.
Oh, thank you.
Uh-huh.
How's the water this morning, all right?
We are familiar with the story of how money makes possible the exchange of many different goods and services among many different people. For his service as a teacher in the local high school, Mr. Blaine earns money. In exchange for money, he is able to obtain the use of the upstairs of Mrs. Mueller's house for himself and his family. Wherever we go, we see money being used as a medium of exchange. Money allows a businessman to exchange part of his profit from his business for a daily paper. Money is a convenient method of exchanging many different kinds of goods and services among many persons. Money is also a standard of value. The value of goods is stated in terms of money. The auto dealer could not possibly state the price of a car as so many hours' work for this carpenter. Nor could he state the price as so many bushels of wheat from this farmer. But a price in dollars is clear to each person. Money is a standard of value. We can think of other purposes money serves. The farmer has just sold this year's crop of wheat. He has enough money to buy all his needs for the year to come. But it is more convenient for him to keep the money now, storing up purchasing power so that he can buy goods and services later as he needs them. Money in the bank is not actually wealth. It is a means of storing up purchasing power that can be used later to obtain wealth. We have covered part of the story of understanding the dollar, but there is more. There is also the story of the value of the dollar, which may decrease. How does this happen? Why does the value of the dollar decrease and increase? That is the story of comparative prices. Prices change. Demand and supply, government controls, subsidies, many things affect prices. But another way to talk about price changes is to consider the value of the dollar. Now, let's say that $1 will buy 5 cans of soup. We can think of the value of a dollar as 5 cans of soup. Another day, if a dollar will buy only 4 cans, its value has gone down. When it will buy 6 cans, the value of the dollar has gone up. Thus, the price of soup determines the value of a dollar in respect to soup. As the price goes up, what the dollar will buy goes down. And as the price goes down, what the dollar will buy goes up. So we say the value of the dollar is inversely related to prices. Now, of course, the price of soup is only one price. The day the price of soup goes down, the price of sugar may go up. But sometimes the prices of many things move upward or downward at the same time. So when we talk about the value of the dollar, we usually mean not the price of one article, but the prices of many articles. We're talking about general price levels. As the general price level goes up, the value of the dollar goes down. As the general price level goes down, the value of the dollar goes up. But the changing value of the dollar has a human story, too. Notice the furnishings of Mrs. Mueller's home. They're old. Well, this is in part because she likes them, but also because of the changing value of the dollar. Mrs. Mueller is a widow. Her income in dollars has remained about the same for the last 10 years. She has money from a pension and from the rent of the upstairs of her home. Because prices have increased, her dollars have declined in value. Her situation is typical of what we call a fixed income. With her income, she can buy less in times of general price increases. Now, the carpenter is a wage earner. He depends on this old car to get him to work. Why such an old car? Well, he wanted a new one some time ago, but rising prices put a new car out of his reach. Since then, however, his wages have increased. Today, he can plan seriously toward buying a new car. But remember, prices went up first. Wages followed later. This is called a wage lag. It is typical of wages in times of price increases. What about Mr. Blaine, the school teacher? His income has increased some, but not much. The wage lag for people on salary is often great. Salaries do not increase as rapidly as prices. And Mr. Blaine finds that he must work on another job part-time in order to live at the same level as before. What about the profits of businessmen? How do rising prices affect this type of income? Mr. Sampson is in the business of making scales. In his storeroom, there are stocks of raw materials his company has purchased for use. These raw materials were purchased some time ago, at a time when prices were lower. But the goods being manufactured will be sold at the present higher prices. So, rising prices often mean increased profits to businessmen. In our story of understanding the dollar, we have seen that money is a medium of exchange. It is a standard of value. And it is a way of storing up purchasing power. The value of the dollar changes in inverse relation to prices. And we have seen some of the effects of generally rising prices on people with various types of income. Now, a question for you to think about and discuss. When prices go down, when the value of the dollar goes up, then how are these people with various types of income affected? You continue the story of understanding the dollar.
I hope you enjoyed that last segment. It's time to dive into our next lesson of how to manage your money. And this involves kind of having an idea of how much money you have coming in and just how much money you have going out on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis. Know your flow. Know your flow.
Let's look in on a high school bookkeeping class.
Yeah. 150. That's a lot of different kinds of jobs.
850,000. That's a lot of people and a lot of jobs. Jobs for us when we graduate.
Maybe for you kids. Me, I'm going into politics. I'm going to be a senator, maybe governor.
Listen to him.
You won't catch me voting for you.
The Honorable Henry Foster.
All right, you'll see.
Tell me, what's the governor doing in bookkeeping class?
I've got a reason.
Yes, Henry has a reason for being here. So have all the others. A little investigation into those reasons should be interesting and might answer some of your questions about bookkeeping and you. Howard Winslow, for instance, is studying bookkeeping because he's going into business. He's going to work in his father's grocery store and eventually take it over. He already works there after school and on Saturdays. Like any other business, a grocery store buys and sells, and it needs a record of every business transaction, such as the sale of groceries to a customer. Receipts from cash sales are recorded in the cash register. Meanwhile, Howard's father has been waiting on a customer who has a charge account. This transaction is recorded on a sales slip, which shows the customer's name, what he bought, and the amount. He'll pay for all his purchases at the end of the month. The day's work done, Howard's thoughts turn to another sort of business transaction. Money paid out by the store, paid to him for his work. Now, Mr. Winslow needs to know how much cash he has taken in and paid out during the day, so he rings up the totals of the day's cash transactions. Inside the cash register, this information is printed on a slip of paper. This slip shows the amount received on account from customers, amount of cash sales, and amount paid out. Watching his father wind up the day's business was what showed Howard how important it is for anyone to have a thorough understanding of bookkeeping before he steps out into the world of business.
Besides the slips from the charge sales and the paper from the cash register, I have a record of every other transaction. The stubs in my checkbook are records of payments made by check, while this invoice is a record of merchandise I've bought and must pay for.
And in addition to these immediate records, Mr. Winslow keeps a permanent record of all transactions for each day. In this book, he enters the amounts from the cash register slip, the check stubs, and the invoices. This is what we mean by keeping records. At the end of each month, he prepares 2 reports which help him, among other things, to make plans for the future and to figure his income tax. One of these reports shows income from the sale of groceries and his various costs for merchandise, rent, insurance, and utilities. The difference between income and costs is net profit. The other report shows the amount of cash on hand, how much his customers owe him, the value of the business and supplies, the debts he must pay, and how much the business is worth. So Howard has seen how important bookkeeping is in operating a business. His father has also explained that neglecting to keep adequate records is one of the most frequent causes of business failure. So that's why Howard is in bookkeeping class. And of course, bookkeeping is just as important for people going into any other line of business. For Stella, who wants to be a nurse in a doctor's office. For Mike, who plans to run a filling station. For Ruth, who hopes to own a beauty parlor. And for Bob, who's going to be a farmer. Like Howard, Bob is already learning his business, and he's learned that farming is a business. A farmer, like a storekeeper or a manufacturer, needs to keep accurate records in order to run his farm at a profit. These records and reports also contain the information he needs to figure out his income tax, which brings us from bookkeeping and business to bookkeeping and the family. For filling out income tax forms is one sort of bookkeeping which goes on in nearly every home.
You know, Ronald, a family is like a small business. We have our income and our expenses. Some things we buy for cash, others on open charge accounts, and some on the installment plan. Important transactions such as buying our home call for careful planning and the keeping of records to be sure our plan is being carried out. Your knowledge of bookkeeping will also help you understand such records as these. Stockholders' reports, which help guide the family in investing its savings. And bank statements, which are a periodic report of our main receipts and expenses. Like a business, a family which keeps regular accounts can plan better for the future, and it's less likely to go broke. Why, even your mother finds it helpful to understand bookkeeping.
Yes, as an officer of the Women's Club, Mrs. Thayer helps manage the club's business affairs and checks over the treasurer's report. For social clubs also have their receipts and expenses and must keep books like any business organization. Ronald has already learned that he must manage his own financial affairs and keep track of his expenses if he's going to stretch his allowance through the whole week. So he knows that when he becomes the head of a family and has to do this on a large scale, bookkeeping will be a mighty useful thing to know. He's studying it for personal use, regardless of the work he goes into. Nancy is in class because she has plans for becoming a stenographer and advancing to be a secretary. She knows that the dictation of a businessman often deals with problems involving bookkeeping principles, so her bookkeeping training will stand her in good stead. She may have to type various kinds of business reports. She won't need to know bookkeeping just to copy such reports, but she will in order to check the accuracy of her work. There's another reason why a knowledge of bookkeeping helps a secretary to get ahead. She may be called upon to keep the personal bookkeeping records of her employer, and in a small office, possibly be the company's bookkeeper. Of course, bookkeepers and accountants are the people who use bookkeeping knowledge and skill most directly. Even among machine operators, it's those who have studied bookkeeping who are most valuable to the company, and who therefore stand a better chance for promotion. For many people, bookkeeping is the all-important first step toward achieving a place in the profession of accounting. Accounting not only entails maintaining all sorts of financial records, but also advising the management in planning financial and operating policies, and in matters of production control. Then, too, there are many opportunities in the field of public accounting, handling the accounting work of individuals and small concerns, and serving large companies as an impartial and trustworthy outsider. No matter where Nancy may work, an understanding of bookkeeping will help her to understand business in general. This brings us to Henry, who announced his intention of becoming a senator or maybe a governor. So why bookkeeping? Because government, too, is a business, a big business. Taxes are levied and collected to provide income. Equipment is bought and salaries are paid. All these transactions must be recorded and reported. This naturally creates many opportunities for bookkeepers and accountants in the federal, state, and municipal governments. And every person who holds public office must be able to understand and interpret such reports. Many of the issues in political campaigns involve business problems.
My opponent in this campaign tells you that he has operated our transportation system so efficiently that cash receipts have always exceeded cash disbursements. He neglects to tell you, however, that much of our transportation equipment is worn out and no reserves have been provided to buy new.
When issues like this arise, not only the candidates, but every voter needs to understand the principles of business and bookkeeping. The best way to learn such principles is to see how they work out in practice, and that's exactly what Henry and the others do in this bookkeeping class. Well, someone seems to be absent today, or perhaps this vacant seat is for you. You've seen some of the many different ways in which bookkeeping will help these students. Now, consider your own case. Can bookkeeping help you to get ahead in your chosen career? Can bookkeeping help you in your personal life?
Hello, welcome back. Now that you know your flow, it's time for our last lesson in how to manage money. And that involves just what do you put your money into? What will you buy? Will you buy a house? Will you buy a car? Will you buy some food? Will you buy something else that rhymes with car? Yes, part of managing money is to know how to invest wisely. Invest wisely.
In a typical city or town, on a typical residential street, we find a typical home occupied by a typical American family. Like millions of his fellow Americans, John Q. Public earns enough money to keep up the payments on a new car. He takes great pride in owning a fine, new, long-term mortgaged home that was built to last a lifetime. Mrs. John Q. Public no longer finds housework fatiguing drudgery, thanks to a host of labor-saving devices, including her husband. Mr. John Q., because of a 40-hour week, has the leisure to dream about his favorite sport.
Darling.
Oftentimes, in a secluded corner of his private den, John Q. reflects on some of the better things he has done with his life. Insurance to protect his family if he is called before his time. Money in a savings account for emergencies, for summer vacations, and to help put John Q. Jr. through college. In spite of the high cost of being a husband and father, John Q. has a private little nest egg. His practical nature tells him it ought to do more than collect moths.
Let's see, where did I put this thing? I know it's... common stock. Do I own any? I don't even know what they are.
In that case, it might be a good idea to get a little information with a fellow who owns and operates a company that makes and sells oil drums. Each year, customers buy more and more from our because he makes a better oil drum than his competitors. One day, customers demand more oil drums than the owner can produce. He figures it will take about $3 million to do the job. So he decides to form a corporation to sell shares in his business to raise the capital he needs. First, the owner goes to the state government to get a corporation charter and permit sell shares in this business. Next, our friend goes to an investment banker and shows him the record of the oil drum manufacturing company's past performance and plans for expansion. The investment banker decides to help our friend sell shares in the corporation to raise the $3 million. However, before any shares in the corporation can be sold, certain information must be filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington. The investment banker and the owner must swear that the information they file contains nothing but the truth. Registration with the SEC does not imply that the government approves the stock issue as a good investment, but only assures the public the material statements about the stock issue are false. Punishment will be according to the law. After SEC registration is effective, the investment banker pays the owner $3 million in exchange for a certain number of shares in the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation. The investment banker sells shares of the common stock to people at a price of $3 million investment and shows a profit for his services in selling the stock. Money received from the sale of shares in the business builds a new and better plant, which produces more and better oil drums. The people who bought common stock own proportionate shares in the corporation, tools, equipment, and all of its assets. Common stockholders elect the directors of the corporation. Directors represent the stock and are responsible for the way the business is run. Directors determine the amount of dividends, if any, to be paid out of earnings to the stockholders. Naturally, when stockholders invest in a business, they hope to receive dividends to help pay for necessities of life. Within a few short years, an increasing demand for the company's product poses friends. How can he fill all the orders? He will have to build more plants and buy more tools to increase production of oil drums. It will take about $20 million to do the job. One way to get this additional capital is to sell more stock to many more people. So the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation votes to send its president to the New York Stock Exchange to see if their common stock can qualify for listing. The corporation wants to list its securities on the exchange so that the additional stock they need to sell will be more attractive to investors all over the nation. Securities listed on the New York Stock Exchange can be sold for cash any time in this national marketplace.
Each year, inquire about listing their securities, but only those which can pass a thorough examination as to their financial health are accepted.
Calling the president of the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation. Calling the president of the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation. Report to Examination Room B. Attention all members of the Stock List Department. Report to Examination Room B.
The Stock List Department examines the qualifications of corporations to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The corporation must have substantial assets in plants, tools, equipment, and cash. There must be a broad distribution of its shares among a large number of stockholders. The corporation must show successful management and sales records and annual net earnings at the time of listing of at least $1 million. The proposed stock issue must meet federal, state, and New York Stock Exchange regulations. The corporation must agree to report to its stockholders at frequent intervals. If the examination by the Stock List Department indicates the corporation meets minimum requirements of the exchange at the time of the examination, the corporation's application for listing is recommended. The Board of Governors of the New York Stock Exchange finally approves the application and sees that it is made public.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Now that the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation's stock is listed, its name is abbreviated for use on the ticker tape. Each time ODM stock or any other stock listed on the exchange is bought or sold, the ticker tape flashes all over the nation the price and number of shares traded. A buyer in Colorado wants to purchase some ODM stock. The buyer's broker in Colorado sees that the last ODM transaction was at $10 a share. The buyer could buy from 1 to 99 shares, which would be known as an odd lot. But our Colorado friend decides to invest in 100 shares, known as a round lot. The Colorado broker wires the order to his New York office. The buy order is telephoned to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It is given to the firm's floor partner, who becomes the representative of the buyer in Colorado. The floor partner goes to the post where ODM stock is traded. The representative of the buyer in Colorado bids $10 a share for 100 shares. But at the moment, there is no stock offered for sale at this price. In the meantime, however, in Maine, an ODM stockholder who needs cash decides to sell his 100 shares if he gets $10 a share. The Maine broker wires the sell order to his firm's representative on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. This firm's floor partner, representing the seller in Maine, offers to sell 100 shares of ODM stock at $10 a share. The price of $10 a share is mutually acceptable and the transaction is made. Like the cowboy in Colorado and the fisherman in Maine, Investors all over the country use the facilities of brokers who are members of the New York Stock Exchange whenever they want to buy or sell stock of companies listed on this national market. Yesterday's savings financed the miraculous growth of our railroads, automobiles, airplanes, farm machinery, communications, electric light and power, textiles, and countless other industries contributing to a more enjoyable life. If a part of our savings continue to flow into industry, American labor, management, and capital can continue to build new tools and plants. Industrial expansion creates jobs for hundreds of thousands of young people who must find employment each year. A growing capacity to produce things which make life better in peacetime can be our greatest protection in time of war. When danger threatens, we can convert industry to produce the things we need to defend ourselves. Common stock investments have helped to make our country prosperous and powerful. Owning a share in American industry is like owning a share in the future of our nation. But remember, John Q, there is a risk as well as an advantage in owning any kind of property. So get the facts before you put your money to work.
Now that you've invested wisely and learned all the ins and outs of doing just that, that should wrap up part 1 of How to Manage Money. Tune in for part 2 coming up next time on How to Live. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your professor, guide, and PhD, Joe Gigliotti. Keep it simple, and we'll see you next time.